You're standing in the TSA line. Your boarding group is boarding soon. You hand over your ID. The officer pauses. That pause is where trips fall apart. In 2026, a small Real ID mistake doesn't just mean extra questions. It can mean being pulled out of line, delayed, and routed into a separate identity verification process that many travelers still don't understand. Real ID enforcement for domestic flights officially began in May 2025. And starting February 1st, 2026, TSA began charging a fee for travelers who use its identity verification option without acceptable ID. Today, I'm breaking down the 12 Real ID mistakes that are getting travelers delayed in 2026 and how to avoid them completely. Let's start with the mistake almost everyone thinks they're safe from. 12. Assuming a recently renewed license is automatically Real ID. A very common mistake in 2026 is believing that a recently renewed driver's license automatically meets Real ID requirements. It does not. Real ID enforcement for domestic air travel began in May 2025, but when people renew their license, they sometimes choose the standard version instead of upgrading to Real ID. That decision feels small at the DMV. It feels very big at the airport. Here's how this mistake shows up in real life. You arrive early. You feel prepared. You hand over your license. The officer scans it, looks at it, and pauses. Then you're asked to step aside because your ID may not meet federal standards for air travel. You're not in trouble, but you're no longer in the normal flow of passengers. That's when delays begin. The fix is simple and takes less than 1 minute. Take your wallet out today. Look at your license carefully. Real ID cards usually display a star marking, but the design varies by state. If you're unsure, check your state DMV website directly. Do not assume. The airport is the worst place to discover your ID isn't compliant, because once you're pulled from the line, your smooth trip becomes uncertain. And uncertainty at the airport always feels longer than it really is. 11. Glancing for the star instead of actually checking it. Most Real ID compliant licenses have a star marking on the card. The Associated Press explained that Real ID licenses typically show a star to indicate compliance with federal standards. But here's the problem. Not all stars look the same. Some are gold, some are black, some are outlined, some are inside circles. Many travelers glance at the corner of their license for half a second and assume they see the right symbol. That quick glance is where the mistake happens. If the officer determines your ID is not compliant, you may be routed to additional identity verification steps. And once you're moved aside, the process becomes slower and more serious. The smart move is simple. Take your ID into bright light. Look carefully. Compare it to your state's official Real ID example online. If you cannot confidently confirm the marking, don't guess. Airports are not the place for guesses. A 5-second check at home can prevent a 30-minute delay at security. When your ID is clear and compliant, the TSA interaction is quick and boring. And boring is exactly what you want at an airport. Number 10. Showing up with an expired ID. An expired ID feels like a small issue, but at the airport it can create big complications. TSA must verify that your identification is valid and belongs to you. When an ID is expired, that verification can take longer, or it may not be accepted at all. If TSA cannot accept your ID, you may be directed to their alternative identity verification process called TSA ConfirmID. Notice the wording TSA uses. It allows them to attempt to verify your identity. That means it is not automatic. Here's how this mistake unfolds. You hand over your expired license. The officer notices the date. You're moved out of the standard line. Time starts ticking. Even if you are eventually cleared, the delay can be stressful, especially if your boarding time is close. The fix is simple and preventative. When you book your flight, check your ID expiration date that same day. If it's expiring soon, renew it early or plan to bring a valid alternate ID like a passport book. Waiting until the night before your flight to check dates is risky. Airports move fast. Expired documents slow everything down. And when security slows down for you, your entire trip feels unstable. Avoid that by checking one small detail in advance. Number 9. Forgetting your ID and assuming they'll look you up. It sounds impossible until it happens. You switch jackets. You change bags. Your ID stays on the kitchen counter. In the past, TSA had an identity verification process for travelers without ID. But starting February 1st, 2026, that process now comes with a fee. TSA officially announced the $45 fee for travelers who use TSA ConfirmID without acceptable identification. The Associated Press reported that the verification process can take up to 30 minutes and is not guaranteed to clear you. So forgetting your ID is no longer just extra questions. It can mean extra screening, significant delay, additional cost, possible denial if identity cannot be confirmed. The best prevention method is simple. Create an airport pocket. Every trip, put your ID in the same pocket the night before departure. Before leaving the house, tap that pocket. It takes 2 seconds. That tiny habit can protect your entire travel day. Because once you realize your ID is missing at the airport, your options shrink quickly, and airport time moves much faster than real life. Number 8. Relying only on digital ID or the wrong passport option. Digital IDs are expanding in 2026. Some states allow ID verification through Apple Wallet or Google Wallet. The Associated Press noted that digital IDs are available in some locations, but not universally across all airports. That means your phone-based ID may not work everywhere. And if your phone battery dies, your digital ID disappears with it. Similarly, many travelers assume that any passport document is interchangeable. The safest and most widely accepted backup is a passport book. Passport cards, digital IDs, and other formats may work in certain cases, but confusion at the checkpoint can lead to additional verification steps. When TSA has uncertainty, they slow down. And when the line slows down around you, stress rises quickly. The simple solution? If you own a passport book, bring it. If you rely on digital ID, bring a charger and a physical backup. Never pack your only acceptable ID in checked luggage. Technology is helpful, but airports still depend heavily on physical documents. Your goal is to make the officer's job easy. When your ID is clear, recognized, and valid, your experience is fast. When there's confusion, your experience changes instantly. Number 7. Thinking this doesn't apply because you rarely fly. Many of the travelers affected in 2026 are not frequent flyers. They are cruise passengers, family vacation travelers, retirees flying once or twice a year. Reuters reported that TSA estimated about 6% of U.S. air travelers were not in compliance with Real ID rules as the new fee approached. 6% may sound small, but 6% of millions of passengers is a large number of people, and most of them likely assumed everything would be fine. The airport does not care how often you travel. It only cares whether your ID is acceptable at that moment. If you fly once per year, treat that flight seriously. Do a full ID check 1 week before departure. If you're flying to a cruise port, remember, the airport is the first part of your vacation. A delay there can affect everything that follows. Preparation is not about fear, it is about stability. When you are prepared, the airport feels routine. When you are not, it feels unpredictable. And unpredictability is what creates long security mornings. Number 6. Booking a ticket with a name that doesn't match your ID. This mistake surprises people because their ID is technically valid. The problem is not the document, it's the name. Your boarding pass name must match your government-issued ID exactly. If your ticket says Mike, but your ID says Michael, that can create questions. If you recently changed your last name and your ID still shows the old one, that can trigger additional checks. CBS News explained that TSA ConfirmID may require travelers to answer questions about themselves in order to attempt identity verification. Those extra steps take time, and when time becomes tight, stress multiplies. The fix is easy. When booking your flight, type your name exactly as it appears on your ID, not your nickname, not your social media name, not what friends call you. If your legal name changed, update your documents before traveling. If that's not possible, bring official documentation of the name change and arrive early. Airports rely on exact matches. One missing letter can create extra verification, and extra verification is what moves you out of the fast lane and into the slower one. Precision prevents problems. Number 5. Thinking TSA will just let it slide like before. For years, many travelers heard warnings about Real ID and still made it through security. That created a dangerous habit. It won't matter. They'll just let me through. I've done this before. But 2026 changed that mindset. TSA officially announced that starting February 1, 2026, travelers without acceptable ID who use the ConfirmID process will be charged a $45 fee. This was not a rumor, it was a formal policy update. The Associated Press also reported that identity verification is not guaranteed and can take additional time. So the idea that TSA will just let it slide is no longer a safe assumption. Even if you are eventually cleared, the process may involve extra questions, additional screening, delays, payment, and if identity cannot be confirmed, you may not be allowed through security. The fix is simple but requires responsibility. Do not treat Real ID compliance as optional. Either obtain a Real ID compliant license or consistently travel with another accepted ID such as a passport book. Airports operate on rules, not exceptions, and hoping for flexibility is not a travel strategy. Number 4. Bringing a backup ID that isn't actually acceptable. Many travelers believe they have a backup until TSA says otherwise. A gym membership card is not acceptable. A work badge is not acceptable. A student ID is not acceptable. The Associated Press listed acceptable alternatives to Real ID, including passport books and other government-issued identification, such as military or permanent resident cards. The key word is government-issued. If your backup ID is not issued by a recognized government authority, TSA may not accept it. Here's how this mistake unfolds. You confidently hand over your backup. The officer explains it is not acceptable. Now you're directed to identity verification. That shift changes your timeline. The safest backup for domestic travel is a passport book. If you do not own one, then your Real ID becomes even more important. Here's a helpful question to ask yourself. If I lost my license today, what could I show TSA tomorrow? If your answer is nothing, that's a vulnerability. Fix that before travel. Never pack your only acceptable ID in checked luggage. Never assume a secondary card will work. And never rely on memory alone. When it comes to airport identification, clarity beats creativity. Number 3. Arriving late when you know your ID might be questioned. Even a small ID issue becomes dangerous when you are short on time. Reuters reported that travelers using the ConfirmID process could face delays of up to approximately 30 minutes, especially if payment is handled on-site. The Associated Press also noted that identity verification may take up to 30 minutes. 30 minutes is manageable if you are early. 30 minutes is devastating if you arrive late. Here's what happens in real life. You arrive 45 minutes before boarding. Your ID triggers additional verification. Time disappears quickly. Now you are watching the clock instead of breathing calmly. The fix is strategic. If you have even the smallest doubt about your ID status, add extra arrival time. Domestic flight, aim for 2 hours early. International, 3 hours or more. If traveling during holidays or peak season, add an additional buffer. Time is your safety net. When you arrive early, problems feel solvable. When you arrive late, problems feel catastrophic. Airport security operates on procedures, not urgency, and urgency does not speed up verification. Arrive early enough that even unexpected steps cannot threaten your boarding time. Number 2. Not understanding the 10-day ConfirmID window. Many travelers do not realize that the ConfirmID payment has a specific validity period. Pay.gov, which processes the ConfirmID fee, states that the payment is valid for 10 days from the travel start date entered during purchase. TSA also explains that the receipt must be presented at the checkpoint each time you travel without acceptable ID during that 10-day window. This creates 2 common mistakes. First mistake, paying twice within 10 days because the traveler did not realize the receipt could cover both departure and return flights. Second mistake, assuming the receipt lasts forever and arriving after the 10-day window has expired. Dates matter. If your round-trip flight occurs within 10 days, keep your receipt saved and accessible. If your return flight is after 10 days, you may need to pay again unless you correct your ID situation before returning. The smartest move is to avoid needing ConfirmID entirely, but if you ever use it, treat the receipt like a boarding pass. Save it as a screenshot, an email copy, or a printed copy, because without proof of payment, your process can become more complicated. Awareness prevents unnecessary repeat problems. Number 1. Not fully understanding what TSA ConfirmID actually is. The biggest mistake in 2026 is misunderstanding TSA ConfirmID. It is not a fine, It is not a ticket, it is not a guaranteed pass. TSA describes ConfirmID as a modernized alternative identity verification option for travelers who do not have acceptable identification. Starting February 1, 2026, using this option requires a $45 fee. The Department of Defense travel site explains that travelers complete an online form and pay the fee to attempt identity verification, and verification is not guaranteed. The key word is attempt. That means even after payment, if TSA cannot verify your identity, you may not be allowed through security. So ConfirmID is a backup option, not a safety net. The real protection is simple. Carry a real ID compliant license or carry another accepted government ID. If you rely on ConfirmID as your plan, you're building your trip on uncertainty, and uncertainty is not how you want to start a travel day.